In the heart of a galaxy far beyond Earth, on the alien planet of Thar, a great king sat on his throne, troubled. King Veros ruled over a powerful empire, but his kingdom was facing danger. A rebellion was brewing among his own people. His warriors, once loyal and strong, were turning against him. Even his best generals had begun questioning his leadership. But the king had a plan, a dangerous plan that would secure his power. His only daughter, Princess Lyra, had always been considered weak. While other members of the royal family were skilled in combat, Lyra had never shown the same strength. She was small, gentle, and often ignored by the warriors of her species. Yet Veros still loved her. He had hoped she would find strength in time. But that time had never come. The king paced back and forth in his grand hall, his mind racing. There had to be a way to stop the rebellion, but how? Then an idea struck him. He turned to his trusted advisor, a warrior named Thrax, who had served him faithfully for many years. "Thrax, I have made my decision," the king said, his voice low and determined. "I will give my daughter to a human warrior." Thrax stared at him in shock. "Your Majesty, a human? Why would you choose such an outsider?" King Veros took a deep breath and looked out over the vast starry sky through the palace window. "The humans have proven themselves in battle. I have heard rumors of their strength and tenacity. A human warrior could be a symbol of strength, one who could rally our people. Perhaps Lyra, though weak now, can grow stronger under his training." Thrax nodded slowly, understanding the king's logic. "You believe this will end the rebellion?" "I must hope so," the king replied. "If nothing else, it will show that we are willing to make sacrifices for the peace of the empire." With that decision made, the king sent word to the human commander John, who had led many successful missions for the galaxy's defenders. John was known for his bravery and strength. He had fought alongside the best, and now he would be asked to take on the challenge of training the alien princess. The next day, John arrived at Thar, unsure of what awaited him. When he met Princess Lyra, he was surprised. She was not what he had expected. She looked fragile, almost delicate, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Lyra's heart sank as she looked at the human who had come to take her away. Her father had given her as a gift, an offering to a warrior from another world. But she had never felt like a warrior. She had always been told she was too weak, too soft to survive in the harsh world of alien politics and battle. "Hello," John said, his voice kind but firm. "I'm here to help you. I'm sure you're capable of more than you know." Lyra gave a small nod, but inside, she felt like she was falling apart. Would she ever live up to her father's expectations? Would she ever be more than the weak princess everyone thought she was? Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. John stood in the grand hall of the alien palace, staring at Princess Lyra. She looked so fragile, so different from the warriors he had trained back on Earth. He had expected a fierce alien princess, someone with the strength of a warrior, but instead, he found a young woman who seemed unsure of herself. The king, Veros, had told John that his mission was simple: train the princess, help her become strong enough to survive in a world filled with danger. John wasn't sure what to make of it. He was used to training soldiers, not royalty. But he accepted the mission, knowing it would be challenging. Little did he know how much it would change both of their lives. "Are you ready?" John asked, his voice calm but direct. Lyra nodded slowly, her pale blue skin glowing faintly in the soft light of the palace. She wasn't sure what to expect from this training. She had always been told that she was weak, that she would never measure up to the fierce warriors of her world. But now, standing before this human soldier, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could prove everyone wrong. John began their training the next day, starting with the basics. "We'll start slow," he said. "You'll need to build your strength first. Then we can focus on technique." Lyra didn't complain. She had been given this opportunity, and she wasn't going to waste it. Every morning, she trained with John, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. She ran miles every day, lifting weights that seemed too heavy for her at first. She learned how to fight with a sword, practicing her swings and footwork until her muscles ached. At first, it was difficult. Lyra stumbled, fell, and grew frustrated with herself. She wasn't used to failing, but every time she fell, John was there to help her back up. He was patient with her, never getting angry or impatient. He believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. As the weeks passed, Lyra's body grew stronger, her muscles became more defined, and she could feel the power within her growing. She was surprised at how quickly she was learning. What had seemed impossible at first was now within her reach. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult training session, John looked at her and smiled. "You're doing well," he said. "You're improving faster than I expected." Lyra, out of breath and covered in sweat, smiled back. "I'll keep going. I won't give up." John nodded. "That's the spirit. You've got the heart of a warrior, Lyra. Don't forget that." As the days turned into weeks, Lyra began to see changes in herself. She wasn't the weak princess she had once been. She was becoming something else, strong, confident, and skilled in ways she never imagined. But there was still a long way to go. She knew that her true test would come soon, when she would face real danger. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and Lyra wasn't sure if she was ready for the challenges that lay ahead. But with John's training and support, she felt more confident than she ever had before. She was ready to find out what she was truly capable of. The sun rose early over the alien planet, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Princess Lyra stood in the middle, wearing simple training clothes, her body still sore from the previous day's workout. She had never felt this way before, so tired, yet so alive. Her muscles ached, and her breath came in heavy bursts. But she wasn't about to stop. Not now. Not after everything John had taught her. John stood nearby, watching her as she caught her breath. His expression was hard to read. He had been impressed with her progress, but he also knew the true test had yet to come. He stepped forward, his voice firm. "You ready for today?" Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm ready." They began their training with the basics. John demonstrated the proper stance for wielding a sword, showing Lyra how to hold it with both hands, keeping it steady but ready. The sword, a human weapon, felt strange to Lyra at first. She wasn't used to its weight, and her grip was weak. But John was patient, offering encouragement and gentle corrections whenever she made a mistake. "Your grip is too tight," he explained. "Relax your hands. Let the sword move with you, not against you." Lyra tried again, focusing on her grip. She slowly started to feel the difference, the sword feeling more natural in her hands with each swing. But she wasn't satisfied yet. She pushed herself harder, swinging the sword faster, trying to imitate the techniques John showed her. She didn't want to be weak anymore. After a few hours, they moved on to hand-to-hand combat. John was impressed with how quickly Lyra picked up the techniques. Despite her initial hesitance, she started to move with purpose, landing punches and kicks with growing precision. She had always been told she was fragile, that her strength wasn't enough. But with each move, she proved them wrong. John wasn't just teaching her to fight. He was teaching her discipline. The discipline to control her emotions, to keep her mind focused even when everything seemed overwhelming. Lyra had always been told that she wasn't capable of greatness, that she was too weak. But John had seen something in her that no one else had. A spark, a potential for strength that she didn't even know existed. By the end of the day, Lyra was exhausted. Her hands were raw, her body bruised, and her mind was racing. But she felt something she had never felt before: pride. She had pushed herself beyond what she thought was possible. And she was beginning to see the warrior inside herself. John watched her as she wiped the sweat from her brow. "You did well today," he said. "But don't get too comfortable. This is just the beginning." Lyra smiled, a flicker of confidence in her eyes. "I won't stop. I'll keep going until I'm stronger than anyone else." John nodded, impressed by her words. That's the spirit. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Lyra stood tall. She was no longer the weak princess of Thar. She was becoming something else, a warrior with the strength and resolve to fight for her place in the galaxy. The days had turned into weeks, and Lyra could feel the change in her body. What had once felt impossible was now becoming second nature. Her muscles were stronger, her movements faster, and her mind clearer. John had pushed her beyond her limits, but it had all paid off. She was no longer the weak princess who had been given away as a gift. She was becoming a warrior in her own right. One day, while they were training in the mountains, a new challenge appeared. A group of rebel soldiers from the alien king's army, still loyal to King Veros, arrived on the planet. They had heard rumors about Lyra and John's training and came to investigate. The rebels saw Lyra as a symbol of weakness, an alien princess who had been trained by a human soldier. They believed it would be easy to capture her and bring her back to the king. They were wrong. John didn't hesitate. "Lyra, get ready," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "We're going to have to fight." Lyra's heart raced. She had never fought a real battle before, not like this. The training with John had prepared her, but facing real danger was different. She gripped her sword tightly, taking in a deep breath. This was her moment. She wasn't going to back down. The rebels charged forward, weapons drawn. John moved first, swiftly taking down two of them with precise strikes. Lyra followed his lead, her sword cutting through the air with newfound strength. She was surprised at how quickly she reacted, her body moving almost instinctively. She fought not just with her strength, but with the techniques John had taught her. She could feel her training taking over. One of the rebels lunged at her, but Lyra was faster. She sidestepped and used her sword to block his attack. With a swift move, she disarmed him and knocked him to the ground. She felt a rush of adrenaline as she stood over him, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt powerful. John was already taking on the remaining rebels, his skills as a soldier clear in every movement. Lyra stayed close to him, ready to fight beside him. They were a team now, working together to defeat the rebels. Lyra's confidence grew with each strike, each successful block, each rebel that fell. She wasn't just the princess anymore. She was a warrior, and she was proving it with every movement. The battle ended quickly. The remaining rebels, realizing they were no match for Lyra and John, retreated. Lyra stood among the fallen soldiers, her sword dripping with the proof of her victory. Her body ached, but she didn't care. She had done it. She had proven to herself that she was no longer weak. John approached her, a proud smile on his face. "You did well, Lyra," he said. "You fought with everything you had." Lyra looked down at her hands, still trembling from the adrenaline. "I didn't think I could do it," she admitted. "But I did. I really did." John nodded. "You're stronger than you know." As they stood together on the battlefield, the sun setting behind them, Lyra realized something important. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her people, for her future. She had become something more than the weak princess her father had once given away. She had become a warrior. The battle with the rebel soldiers had left Lyra feeling more powerful than she ever thought possible. She stood tall, her heart still racing, her breath steadying. John had been right. She was stronger than she knew. But now, a new question began to form in her mind. What if there was even more strength hidden inside me? As the days passed, Lyra continued her training with John, but she started noticing something strange. Her body was changing, not just from the hard work, but in a way that felt unnatural. Her muscles grew even stronger, faster than before. She could lift heavier weights and run farther distances with ease. Her combat skills improved at a rate that surprised even John. One afternoon, as they were practicing swordplay, John stopped mid-strike and looked at her with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Lyra, you're improving too quickly. It's like your body is catching up to something, almost as if it's being forced to adapt. Are you feeling all right? Lyra paused, wiping sweat from her brow. I feel fine, John. In fact, I feel stronger than I ever have before. Her voice was confident, but there was a hint of unease. She wasn't sure what was happening, but it felt like something more than just hard work. It was as if her very body was awakening, tapping into some hidden potential that had always been there, waiting. John studied her for a moment. This isn't normal. I've never seen anyone train this fast. Maybe your species has abilities I don't fully understand. Lyra frowned, unsure what to think. She had always been told that she was weak, that she would never be strong like the warriors of her people. But now, after weeks of intense training, she was beginning to feel like she could be more. Could this hidden power inside her be something she had always had buried deep within? Something no one had ever allowed her to discover. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions. She had always thought her weakness was something that defined her. But now, she wasn't so sure. She wanted to know where this power was coming from, and how far it could take her. The next morning, she woke early, determined to push herself even further. She went to the training grounds before John arrived, wanting to test herself alone. She ran harder than ever, faster than before. She lifted heavier weights, her body adjusting with each movement. Then she started practicing her combat techniques, sparring with an invisible enemy. As she fought, Lyra felt something stir within her, an energy, a fire that grew stronger with each strike. She wasn't just fighting with her body. She was fighting with something deeper, something powerful. It was as if she had tapped into the very core of her being, unlocking a force that had been hidden away for years. John arrived just in time to see her landing a powerful blow on the training dummy, sending it crashing to the ground. He stood there, stunned by what he saw. Lyra was no longer the unsure, weak princess he had met weeks ago. She was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. Lyra, John said, his voice filled with awe. I don't know how, but you've done it. You've become something else. You've become the warrior I always knew you could be. Lyra looked up at him, her heart pounding with excitement. I feel it, John. I don't know what's happening, but I feel more powerful than I ever have before. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next. John smiled, a proud expression on his face. You've only just begun, Lyra, but now, I know you're ready. The days of peace and training didn't last long. Word had spread across the galaxy about Lyra's incredible transformation. Her strength and skill had become the talk of many worlds, and soon, it reached her father's ears. King Veros, still ruling over the galaxy, had not been pleased with his daughter's rapid growth. In his eyes, she was a symbol of weakness, a prize to be traded away. He had never expected her to rise to power, and now he feared what she might become. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the training ground, Lyra sat beside John, lost in thought. The calm was broken when a loud noise filled the air. Spaceships, dark and ominous, descended from the sky. They'd found us, John muttered, his hand going to the weapon at his side. Lyra stood, her heart racing. What's happening? Before John could respond, a familiar voice boomed from the landing ship. It was her father's voice, harsh and commanding. Lyra, come to me. You are no longer safe here. Lyra's stomach twisted. She had expected this moment, knew it might come one day, but it still hurt. Her father, who had once sent her to a human, now saw her as a threat. She turned to John, her eyes filled with determination. I can't go back. Not like this. John's eyes softened, but his expression was firm. You don't have to go anywhere. We'll fight. We've come this far. But Lyra knew that the decision wasn't hers to make anymore. Her father's soldiers were landing quickly, and soon they would be surrounded. The reality of the situation hit her. Her father was no longer the protector she once knew. He had betrayed her. "I won't run," she said, her voice strong. "But I also won't let him control me anymore." With no time to waste, Lyra and John gathered their weapons and prepared for what was to come. As the first of the king's soldiers stormed the training grounds, they were met with fierce resistance. John fought with precision, his experience in battle clear. But it was Lyra's strength that stood out. She moved with speed and power, her sword cutting through the air with deadly accuracy. Her body had become a weapon, and each strike sent shockwaves through the soldiers who tried to overpower her. But even as Lyra fought, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her father's betrayal. She had loved him, trusted him, but now she was facing the harsh truth. The king did not see her as a daughter. To him, she was just another pawn in his game. The battle raged on, but Lyra was not afraid. She was no longer the weak princess her father had sent away. She was a warrior, a force that no one, not even her own father, could control. With every strike, she pushed back the soldiers, driving them farther and farther from the training grounds. Finally, as the last of the soldiers retreated, Lyra stood tall, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She had proven her strength, not just to herself, but to her father as well. She had betrayed his expectations, and now there was no going back. John approached her, his expression both proud and concerned. "We've won, Lyra, but this isn't over. They'll come back for you." Lyra nodded. "I know, but now I'm ready. I'll face whatever comes next." As the night fell over the battlefield, Lyra felt a shift inside her. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a leader, a force that could never be ignored. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but Lyra was ready to make her mark. Lyra stood in the middle of the training grounds, watching the last of the king's soldiers retreat into the distance. Her heart was still racing from the battle, but there was no time to rest. The king's forces would be back. She had seen the look in their eyes, a promise to finish what they started. John stepped up beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to move. They'll be back with reinforcements. We can't stay here." Lyra nodded, feeling a heavy weight settle on her shoulders. She had fought for her freedom, but now the real test had come. Her father, the king, had turned against her, and there was no going back. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her survival. Together, they quickly gathered their things and set off into the nearby forests. The thick trees and dense underbrush would help hide them from the enemy's view, but they couldn't stay hidden for long. They had to find a way off the planet, somewhere safe, where they could regroup and plan their next move. As they walked, the air grew colder and the shadows of the trees stretched long into the twilight. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She turned to John, her voice barely a whisper. "What if they find us? What if my father sends someone else after me?" John's expression was grim, but he didn't falter. "We'll keep moving. We'll stay ahead of them, and we won't stop until we're safe." Lyra didn't answer. She had always trusted John, but the reality of the situation was setting in. She had no home now. Her father had cast her aside, and the rebellion he had started was still looming over her head. She didn't know where to turn next, but she knew she couldn't stop. Not now. The forest was thick with fog as they moved deeper into the wilderness. Lyra's steps were light, but her mind was heavy with the weight of her choices. She had broken away from her father, defied his orders, and stood up to his soldiers. But now she was an enemy to him, a traitor. She didn't know what he would do next, but she couldn't let fear control her. She had come too far to back down. "We'll find a way out of this," John said, his voice steady. "We always do." Lyra looked up at him, seeing the trust in his eyes. He believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. That thought filled her with warmth, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had to keep moving. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, Lyra's thoughts turned to her people, the people she had been forced to leave behind. She didn't know what would happen to them now that the king had turned against her. Would they be forced to follow his orders? Would they rise up against him, or would they remain silent, afraid of his power? The more she thought about it, the more determined she became. She had to return, not just for herself, but for them, for her people. She had to show them that there was more to her than the weak princess her father had tried to control. "I'm going back," Lyra said suddenly, her voice filled with resolve. "I won't let my people suffer because of my father's betrayal." John stopped and turned to her, his expression one of surprise. "Are you sure? It's dangerous. We can't go back now." Lyra's eyes were fierce. "I have to. I'm not the weak princess anymore. I've become something more, and I'm ready to lead." John studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I'll stand with you, whatever happens." With that, they continued on their journey, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult. But Lyra was no longer afraid. She had discovered her true strength, and now she was ready to fight for everything she had lost. The days of running were over. Lyra and John had traveled across the wilderness, staying hidden as much as possible. But now, they had reached the point of no return. The king's forces were closing in, and there was no place left to hide. The time had come for a final confrontation. Lyra stood at the edge of a steep cliff, looking out over the vast plains below. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but there was no fear, only determination. She had spent her life running, hiding, and following orders. But now she was ready to make her own choices. She had become the warrior her father never expected. And she wasn't going to stop now. John walked up beside her, his face serious. "They'll be here soon. Are you ready?" Lyra turned to him, her eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "I have to be. We've come too far to back down now." John nodded, knowing there was no turning back. They had trained together, fought together, and now they would face the king's soldiers together. There was no more running. It was time to fight for her people, for her freedom, and for the future she had chosen. The sound of engines grew louder in the distance, signaling the arrival of the king's forces. Lyra clenched her fists, her breath steady as she prepared herself for what was to come. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for her right to lead, to be the ruler she was meant to be. The first wave of soldiers arrived, armed and ready for a fight. Lyra and John took their positions, ready to face them head-on. The soldiers charged, but Lyra was faster. She moved with precision, her sword cutting through the air, striking down the enemy with every swing. She wasn't the weak princess anymore. She was a warrior, a leader, and the king's army couldn't stop her. John fought by her side, his skills complementing hers perfectly. Together, they took down wave after wave of soldiers. But there were more. Always more. The battle seemed endless, but Lyra's strength only grew. Each strike, each movement, made her more powerful. Her training with John had prepared her for this moment, but it was something deeper within her that gave her the strength to keep going. As the battle raged on, Lyra saw the king's flagship in the sky. She knew he was watching. She knew he had sent these soldiers to stop her, to bring her back. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Not anymore. John caught her eye, and without saying a word, they made a plan. They would head for the king's flagship and end this once and for all. It was the only way to make sure the battle was won. Lyra nodded, her determination clear. With a swift move, they'd fought their way through the remaining soldiers, cutting a path toward the flagship. Every step felt like a challenge. But Lyra didn't hesitate. She was ready. When they reached the flagship, they were met by the king's most trusted general. The final battle was about to begin. Lyra faced the general, her eyes full of fire. "This ends now," she said, her voice steady. The general sneered, but Lyra wasn't intimidated. She had come too far to back down now. The fight was intense. The general was strong, but Lyra was stronger. She used everything she had learned, every technique John had taught her, every ounce of strength she had gained. And in the end, it was Lyra who stood victorious. Breathing heavily, Lyra turned to face the king's ship. She had won. She had proven her strength, not just to her father, but to herself. She was no longer the weak princess. She was the leader her people needed. Jon came to her side, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Lyra. You're ready." Lyra looked out over the battlefield, where the last of the king's soldiers were retreating. She had fought for her freedom, for her people, and for her future. And now, the galaxy would know her name. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. Lyra stood on the battlefield, her sword at her side, her heart still racing from the fight. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the land. The king's forces had retreated, but Lyra knew they would return. They always did. Her father, the king, would not stop until he had her back under his control. But something had changed. Lyra had changed. She had faced the king's soldiers, defeated them, and proven to herself that she was no longer the weak princess he had once given away. She was a warrior, and she was ready to lead. As she stood there, Jon came up beside her. His face was tired but proud. "You did it, Lyra. You showed them what you're made of." Lyra smiled faintly. "I didn't just show them. I showed myself. I'm not who I used to be." Jon nodded, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "But the king, he'll come for you again. He won't just let this go." Lyra looked out at the horizon, her mind racing. She knew Jon was right. Her father would never accept defeat. But for the first time, she felt ready to face him, to confront him. She had already proved her strength. Now, she had to prove her resolve. Later that evening, Lyra and Jon sat by a campfire, the warm glow illuminating their faces. The air was cool, and the silence between them spoke volumes. Lyra's thoughts were heavy. Her father had sent his soldiers to kill her, to bring her back. But what if he had changed? What if he could see the woman she had become? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a spaceship descending from the sky. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She knew what this meant. Her father had come for her. The question was, how would she face him now? The ship landed softly on the ground, and the ramp lowered. Out stepped the king's ambassador, a tall, armored figure who had served as the king's most trusted messenger. He walked toward Lyra, his expression unreadable. "You've won, princess," the ambassador said. "The king has seen what you are capable of." Lyra stood tall, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" The ambassador's voice softened. "The king has sent me to speak with you. He has realized that he was wrong to underestimate you. He was wrong to see you as weak. He has heard the stories of your strength. And now, he asks for your forgiveness." Lyra's heart thudded in her chest. She had imagined this moment 100 times, but now that it was here, she didn't know what to say. Her father, the king, had always been a man of power, someone who never admitted his mistakes. But now, here he was, asking for her forgiveness. "I don't know if I can forgive him," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "He betrayed me. He treated me like a pawn." The ambassador nodded, understanding. He knows the damage he's done, but he believes that you can leave the empire, that you have the strength to take it to places he could never. He wants to make amends. Lyra. Lyra stood in silence, her mind spinning. Could she forgive her father? Could she trust him again after everything that had happened? The thought of leading her people, not as a princess, but as a true ruler, felt right. But could she do it with her father by her side? Or would she be better off forging her own path? As the night stretched on, Lyra made a decision. She wasn't just going to follow in anyone's footsteps. She would be the leader her people needed. And whether her father stood beside her or not, she would fight for her future, for her people's freedom, and for herself. "I'll meet him," she said, her voice steady. "But only on my terms. I've earned the right to make my own choices now." The ambassador nodded, impressed. "Then the king will hear you, princess. You have truly become the leader of this empire." As the ambassador turned and walked back to the ship, Lyra stood tall, She had come so far, and now she was ready to face whatever came next. Her journey was just beginning, but this time, she would be in control of her destiny. The days after the battle felt surreal. Lyra could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short time. She had gone from being a weak princess, hidden away from the world, to a powerful warrior, leading a rebellion against her father's soldiers. She had faced her fears and proved that she was stronger than anyone ever thought. Now she stood at the edge of the palace grounds, looking out at the empire she was about to lead. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the city. It was a new day, a new beginning, and it was hers to shape. John stood beside her, his presence a comfort as always. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice quiet but filled with support. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart steady. "I've never been more ready. This is my chance to make a real change." Together, they made their way inside the palace, where her father waited. The king had agreed to meet her on her terms, his way of showing he was willing to accept the woman she had become. But Lyra knew this would not be an easy meeting. There were so many things left unsaid between them, so much pain that still lingered. When they entered the throne room, King Veros was waiting for them, seated on his throne. His once imposing figure now seemed smaller, less powerful. He looked at Lyra with a mixture of pride and regret in his eyes. "Lyra," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it, "you've become everything I never expected. Everything I never allowed you to be." Lyra stood tall before him, her eyes unwavering. "I had to become this. I had to fight for my place, not just for myself, but for my people. I'm not the weak princess you thought I was. I'm the leader this empire needs." The king's gaze fell to the floor, his hands clasped in front of him. "I see that now. I was wrong, Lyra. I'd spent my life trying to control everything, even my own daughter. But you've shown me what true strength is. I see that you are the one who can lead this empire, not me." Lyra's heart tightened. Hearing her father admit his mistakes was something she never thought she would hear. But the truth was, she had changed, and so had he. She was no longer the princess he could control. She was the leader of her own destiny. "I won't lead this empire with your help, father," Lyra said firmly. "I'll lead it on my own, with the support of the people. I've earned that right, and I won't let anyone take it from me." The king looked up at her, a deep sadness in his eyes. "I understand. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Lyra. I only want you to know that I see you for who you really are, a warrior, a leader, and my daughter." Lyra's heart softened, but she didn't let her guard down. "You're right. You've always treated me as a pawn, and I can't forget that. But I'll fight for this empire, even if you aren't with me. I'll fight for its future, and I'll make sure it stands on its own 2 feet." The king nodded slowly, the weight of his failure heavy on his shoulders. "Then go, Lyra. Lead them. You've earned it." As she turned to leave the throne room, John stepped forward, standing by her side. He had been with her from the beginning, and he would stay with her until the end. Lyra looked at him and smiled. "It's time. Let's rebuild this empire together." And with that, she walked out of the palace, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Lyra felt in control. She had proven herself, not just to her father, but to the entire galaxy. And now, she was ready to lead. The sun rose higher in the sky, lighting the path ahead. A new dawn had come, and with it, a new beginning for Lyra, the warrior and the leader.